I would like to take a moment to welcome you to what would have been our spring college info night. I hope that you're all healthy, doing as well as can be during this time. And we wanted to offer some information about what your students should be doing right now and how they should be proceeding over the summer and the fall. So the last time that we got together back in December, we talked about a variety of things. Most of them are highlighted on this screen, but we went through the application process and then talked a little bit with you all about how you can be supporting your students, what our role is, and what junior and senior seminar will look like. Obviously, junior and senior seminar are up in the air, but if you want to go back and learn about the topics that we talked about, if you weren't able to attend or you want a refresher, that a recording of that presentation is available on the website. So definitely check it out. So this spring, we've asked your students to do a variety of things, and some of them have done all of them, some of them have done most of them, some of them are still working on completing these action items. We've asked them to meet with their counselor. They either have met with us already or they've scheduled a meeting with us for some time over the next few weeks, but we'd like to have a junior meeting with all students. We've asked them to request teacher recommendations. We've asked them to do this by email and to let us know when their teacher has confirmed. We've asked them to complete questionnaires for us as their counselor and their teachers as well. It's really important to research testing policies for schools. We know that this information continues to change. Almost every day I get another email that says thus and such school has decided to go test optional, so it's definitely important to keep on top of this information, as we know some students have not yet taken the SAT or ACT yet. We would also like students to consolidate and refine their college list. And then we recommend that students take the college essay guide workshop that we sign students up for. It's from June 1st to June 5th. So probably the week that you'll be receiving this recording, they should be taking the essay workshop. There are presentations on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The students can either watch them live. He's doing them twice each day, or they can watch the recording. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, they should be doing some writing. We typically use the college essay guides resources in junior seminar, but since junior seminar was going to be a little bit more difficult to finagle with all the courses that students were having, we've been using some Naviance lessons, and then we wanted to provide the college essay guide course for students. So hopefully that'll be fun for them. We typically have college rep visits at AMSA every fall. We don't know exactly what this is going to look like yet. Obviously, that's going to be pending information about the school schedule, and I don't know that we will have a lot of visitors coming on and off campus. But either way, we will have opportunities for students to meet with admissions counselors. So we'll probably still be using Naviance to sign up. We ask that students bring questions and be professional at these visits. They're typically meeting with the admissions rep that reviews their application, so it is pretty important. It's their opportunity to make a positive and lasting impression, typically individually or in a small group, depending on how many students show up for the session. So we're looking at possibly doing these visits virtually if we can't have them in person in the fall. But we are working on that now. So we talked about this briefly in December when we met with you all, but students use a variety of different application forms to apply to college. Most common are the common application and the coalition application. Both of those applications, students fill out one application that goes to many of their schools. There may be supplemental information required by individual schools, a supplemental essay or another form, but the bulk of that application goes to all the places that they're applying. Then some institutions have their own applications, so you would maybe just be applying to X university with that application. And then lastly, we do have some states that use a state-specific application for all of their colleges and universities. The University of California system, Texas is another one that has a a state-specific form. So there are, a couple of different ways that your students will apply to college or university in the fall, but most of them fall in one of these categories. The essay. So the prompts are now available on the Common Application website. We tell students that they need to tell a story, not their life story, in 650 words. The purpose of the essay is twofold. Colleges like to have a writing sample to make sure students can write. But I think most admissions reps like to read the essay because it gives information that usually can't be found somewhere else on the application. So telling a story that gives the admissions rep more information about the student can really humanize them and can make a big difference. So the essay is a really vital part of the application. And really by senior year, this is actually kind of where students may have the most control or ability to impact their application because the courses that they've taken for 3 years and the grades that they've received, the grades that they've earned, that's already done. The co-curricular choices that they've made, the percentage of senior year that students can still be doing things is, it's not tiny, but it's also not huge compared to the scope of their application. So for students who are applying in November, we're really only talking a couple of months. For students who are applying in January, it's about half the year. So we really ask them to put a lot of thought into their essay because it's one of the pieces that they still have control over. And I already talked a little bit about the College Essay Guide workshop. If a student isn't able to make that, there are tons of free resources that he puts out, and we highly recommend his work because he's awesome. His name is Ethan Sawyer. He goes by College Essay Guy. Okay, supplemental essays. Supplemental essays are required by many colleges, certainly not all. They vary in length. It could be 100 words, it could be 500 words. The most common question that students will see is kind of the why us question. Why do you want to come to our institution? Why are we the right choice for you? We will do some work with students around writing supplements in the fall. That's currently our plan. But it's really great for students to begin tracking those essays now so they don't have any surprises come fall. Every year I have somebody who hasn't really checked for supplements and then all of a sudden 3 days before their application deadline, they realize they have to write another essay. And that's not fun. We sent out a tracker that we sent out a spreadsheet template that students can use to track information about the colleges and universities they're thinking of. And there's one page that has kind of the things that you might think about, like testing and percentage of students that are accepted and where is it and how far from home and what do you like about it. But the second sheet in that spreadsheet, it's an essay tracker, and you can track both supplemental essays and then any other kinds of if there are any different essays, depending on the type of application form students are filling out. So tracking those essays now is really important, and thinking about pairing information about what they've done in high school with why they want to go to a specific school is really important. And again, we'll talk more about that with them in the fall of their senior year. Teacher recommendations. We recommend that students have 2 core academic teachers. Typically, we ask that they're teachers who know them well. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who they've gotten an A in the class. You can get a great recommendation from a teacher who has seen a student struggle and grow over the year. We typically ask that students have someone that they've had in their junior or their senior year write for them. It might be a little different in this time because we know that there may be a sophomore year teacher who knows the student better just based on our circumstances this year. We can talk about that individually with students, but we certainly don't necessarily recommend that students have someone write for them who they had in 9th grade and they have had no dealings with since. We'd like to see recommendations that are a little bit more recent. The focus of these recommendations is really on students' academic performance, as opposed to all of their personal characteristics, all of their co-curricular interests. We will write about that in the council recommendation. We ask that students ask spring of grade 11, so that time is now. And then it's really important to write a thank you note. This isn't something that teachers are required to do. When a teacher writes a letter, it typically takes them a while. Some people it takes, an hour or 2 hours per recommendation, and they do a really nice job. And so we really encourage students to write a thank you note. It makes a big difference. For the counselor recommendation, we ask students to complete the counselor recommendation questionnaire in Naviance. We ask them to have a junior meeting with us. We offered the opportunity for parents to fill out a brag sheet. If you would still like to do that, you still can. We've begun to write recommendations, but there's still time. We would love it before the end of the school year if possible. You can email your child counselor if you are missing the link to that form. And we really focus on the big picture: academics, co-curricular stuff, community involvement, personal characteristics. So we try to talk about the student as a whole. We also then send a transcript and an AMSA profile. The profile tells about the school in general. The transcript is a record of student grades. It's just final grades. We provide a weighted GPA. It tells the course level. We will be factoring in quarter 4 as outlined in the academic policies that we'd set out, or the grading policies that we sent out at the beginning of this COVID-19 crisis. But so students will still receive an end of year grade. It will be noted somewhere, either on the profile or on the transcript, what we did for grades, because schools or colleges and universities are going to want to know that. How did we grade students for this spring? So they won't see the S plus or S minus for quarter 4 of junior year. They will still only see the numerical grade at the end of the year, but we'll explain our policy so that colleges and universities will know how we graded students. So testing, this is probably the, most frustrating question, and the one that I have the least information and answers to. College Board and ACT are actively looking to add additional test dates for the fall. They're actively looking to add additional test sites for the fall. But many colleges and universities have opted to go test optional for the submission cycle. So again, we really recommend that students check each college website pretty frequently for more information and make sure that they know if things are changing. It's really good to figure out whether or not the test optional, if a school has decided to go test optional, if the testing is required for anything else, like do you have to have testing to be considered for merit scholarships? So it's really important to look at that. But really all we can say at this point is stay tuned and stay flexible. If you find out that all of your schools have gone test optional, and you already have, SAT from December, maybe you just call it good and you put your energy into other things. But we can definitely talk about that individually with students, and we'll send in more information as it becomes available. But keep an eye on College Board and ACT. So interviews are something that a lot of students decide that they are interested in, either during their junior year or their senior year. There are definitely virtual options that are currently available. It's really important to take advantage of these opportunities if possible, but it's also important to make sure you're prepared. Many times at the end of an interview, there's time for students to ask questions, and if they don't have any questions, or they ask questions that can easily be discovered from the website, it just doesn't really reflect well on them. So we recommend looking online at sample questions that are typically asked in college admissions interviews. There are lots of different lists. There are a lot of standard questions that students can expect. It's really good for them to prepare, maybe do a mock interview with someone either at home or a friend, and get some feedback so that they have been in an interview setting before. Excuse me. So colleges and universities offer different types of interviews. So there are informational interviews, and those are really non-evaluative. Those can still be a way to demonstrate interest to a college or university, which we'll talk about in a minute, but they're not necessarily being used to evaluate the candidate. There are also evaluative interviews that are then used as part of the admission file. So it's really good to know which one you're in. So it's important to ask that question, or make sure that you look on the website to find out. Sometimes you're meeting with an admissions rep, sometimes you're meeting with a current student, sometimes you're meeting with an alum. It really depends. So demonstrating interest. Some schools, many, most, track demonstrated interest of students. Not all schools who track that information use it in the admissions process, but it is a factor for some schools, especially when they're trying to figure out who they think is going to come or not. Demonstrating that you have interacted with the school, with the emails that they've been sending is really important. So there are virtual info sessions and panels that you can take advantage of. There are virtual tours. There are lots of ways to interact. You can follow schools on Twitter and Instagram. You can talk directly to admissions officers. There's lots of ways to demonstrate that you're interested in a school. But if you get an email from a school you're interested in, you should open it. You should click on it because they know that you have. It's kind of a weird world, but it is really important to interact as you can with the schools that you're interested in. Again, they're tracking it. So I wrote international students. This isn't entirely new, and I'm talking more about not necessarily the demonstrated interest piece of this, but having a lot of virtual ways to interact with the school. There are international students who've been doing this for years, who have been looking at colleges online, who have been doing virtual tours, who've been meeting on Zoom with admissions reps to find out more information. So there is a model for this. I think the difference is really the scale. But just important to keep in mind that this is something that colleges have done before and really kind of worked virtually with students, just not in these numbers. So when it comes time for students to send an application, it's the student's responsibility to send their application, their essay, and the fee, and then mark it in Naviance when it's sent. We use Naviance to see what supporting materials we should send. So that marking in Naviance is key. If a student does not mark that they've sent it in Naviance, they essentially have not sent it to us to send all their supporting stuff. We can't see Common App. We don't know. So students must mark in Naviance when they've sent an application. It's also the student's responsibility to send test scores. ACT or SAT scores typically need to come officially from the testing agency directly to the college or university, and that is on the student. We are not sending SAT scores for students. It's our responsibility to send the transcript and the profile, the teacher recs, the counselor rec, and then we send mid-year grades to schools either that students have been accepted to or students that there's still applications pending. We don't usually send mid-year grades to schools that kids have been rejected from in an early round unless there's a reason that they've asked us to send them. So we take care of all of that as long as students have communicated with us through Naviance that they have applied to a school. We do all of that typically on deadline day so that everything is there time-stamped and ready to go. We did go over this in our last meeting, but just a quick slide on the types of applications. So I think the one we get most questions about is early action versus early decision. Early decision, you've decided it's binding. You signed a contract that says if I'm accepted at the school, I'm going to go. Early action, you apply early and you find out early. So typically those deadlines are around October 15th to November 15th. November 1st is probably the most common deadline. If you want more information, you can certainly Google these terms, but hopefully the slide's pretty self-explanatory. All right, so when it comes time to make a decision, students will either hear that they're accepted to the school, that they're deferred, and that means the school wants to take a second look at them. That typically happens when a student applies early action or early decision, and the school has decided not to accept them at the early time, but they're going to look at them with the regular application pool. Some students are put on a wait list. It means we like you, but we don't have space at this time. Some students get in off a wait list, others don't. It's really hard to tell. It depends on the year. But we certainly, if it's a top choice for a student, we recommend staying on the wait list. And then sometimes students are denied, so they don't get in. We recommend that when students are comparing financial aid packages, they look at each package in detail. There's no standard form for financial aid letters, which is a little bit frustrating, but it's really important to make sure that you are trying to compare apples to apples. And so we recommend there's a wonderful form on the MIFA website to where you can actually put in information from different schools, and then it calculates how much you'll owe so that you can compare the same type of aid from each school, as opposed to some places that might put a loan in their financial aid package as like, oh, congratulations, we gave you a loan, and that, you know, that's kind of hard to parse out when you're looking at two letters. So we recommend using those tools. The school with the lowest cost of attendance, in general, isn't always the cheapest option because some schools have more financial aid to offer. So it's really important to, again, kind of look at those packages, and there may be a more expensive school that you applied to that actually gave you more money. So we don't want students to necessarily get scared off by the cost of attendance if they think they may qualify for some financial aid, or some either some merit aid or some need-based aid. That's a really important thing about how much money will you owe when you graduate. So looking at, you know, if you are going to have to take out $20,000 in loans every year for 4 years, that's a pretty substantial bill. So we definitely encourage students to look at not just what they're going to take out for 1 year, but what they will take out over 4 years. We don't necessarily recommend taking out more in loans over your 4 years than you'll make in your first year of working, because those payments can be pretty scary. And we also ask students, what is your ultimate goal? If you know that you're going to go from a bachelor's degree to graduate school, you may want to save some of that loan capacity for graduate school. So looking at kind of what is your plan? Are you going to be in school for 4 years, or 6 years, or 10 years? And how can you make sure that you can afford that? Lastly, I think we're almost to the end. It's certainly possible to transfer. You can transfer, you know, after your first year, depending on, you know, where you've applied and where you want to go. So transferring is an option. There are also some transfer options through Massachusetts state schools. So I've outlined some of these here, but if you're interested in knowing more, you can Google mass transfer, but it can be a really, really great way to get an associate's degree or part of your bachelor's degree at community college and then finish up at a 4-year school. It can be a really cost-efficient way to go to school if money is going to be an issue. And for many people, it may be at this point. Things look different than they did even a few months ago for a lot of families. So it's really important to consider those options, and we'd be happy to talk more about this with you if you would like. So what students should be working on over the summer? A draft of their college essay, finalize their college list. It'd be great if they could create their Common App account, start working on their supplemental essays, and then complete the spreadsheet. We have a template that we sent out on the junior seminar classroom that has application deadlines, testing policies, FAFSA and CSS profile deadlines for financial aid, any other information that is important to the student, and also tracking those essays so that they know what's coming. And if students do all of that, they'll be in great shape. If they do most of it, they'll be in good shape. If they do none of it, we'll get them through, but the fall isn't going to be quite as fun. So please spend some time this summer. All right, so I think that is it. That's how this is our contact information. Hopefully you know how to get a hold of each of us by this point. I hope that this presentation was helpful. It's a little weird presenting to an empty room, but yeah, hopefully you're all doing well, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.